Mieris, Temeri. I see you were at Temeri. So why I'm asking you, it's because Strate will talk about the protected sea areas. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this conference. And probably I will, in a way, continue what has been started by previous speaker. Also here, I will focus on the knowledge-based management of the Baltic Sea. But what I would like to add here is that in terms of management of the Baltic Sea and to maintain the good quality actually is an even larger challenge, because we have 9 countries surrounding the Baltic Sea and we should agree on our common goals, because if there is no communication and we do not harmonize our activities, then of course we will not be able to manage the sea properly. Just briefly, I will provide you with an overview about the Baltic Sea. Here we can see the factors that contribute to the actual ecosystem. First of all, the Baltic Sea is one of the largest ecosystems consisting of the relatively low concentration salt water. And if you compare it with open oceans and with lakes, of course it's quite different. And if we look at the factors, of course one of them is the concentration of salt, because I would say it's some 10 to 12 promils, which means 10 to 12 grams of salt per liter of water. Accordingly, also here we can talk about stratification, which means that the salt water going in from the Nordic Sea, this water is much heavier and it flows along the bottom of the sea, while the fresh water flowing in from the many rivers carries the fresh water, which tends to float on the upper levels, which of course contributes to this stratification. Of course, also we can mention the stratification in terms of different temperatures. Generally speaking, the Baltic Sea is quite shallow. The average depth is 55 meters. In other words, it can be regarded as a lake in terms of depth. Accordingly, if we look at the biodiversity, we could say that we are talking about around 1,000 different species, which is a very rounded number. When we talk about the Botnian Bay or Riga Bay, there is a less quantity of different species in these bays or gulfs. I'm truly happy to see that actually very much has been done and is being done in order to maintain the good quality of the Baltic Sea water and ecosystem. And one of the measures is the so-called the action plan for the Baltic Sea, according to which the vision is to have a healthy environment which maintains the diversity of different species and also provides us with the sustainable economic activities to be carried out within this ecosystem. And in order to have such a vision and such an opportunity, we need, or we have defined 4 objectives. One of them is eutrophication neutral Baltic Sea. Also the Baltic Sea, which is friendly to the biological biodiversity. The same goes with the Baltic Sea, which is free of dangerous substances. And as the 4th is the environmentally friendly economic activities. Of course, I can also talk about different sub-targets or sub-objectives that can be related. And one of the solutions that we are probably already well aware of is to arrange for protected areas. The same goes with the Baltic Sea. We have such a solution applied in the Baltic state under the program of Natura 2000. In the Baltic Sea, as you could see in the picture, we can talk about different basins. We have the Central Basin, Botnian Gulf, Riga Gulf, and one of the aims for us could be to have the Natura 2000 areas that cover at least 10% of each such basin. And of course, it is clear that at the same time we should view these protection aims taking into account that the heavy traffic in the Baltic Sea, and at each moment we have 2,000 vessels in the sea, which means that we have very intense traffic that crosses the whole central basin and goes to our major ports. And in order to solve these conflicting situations, it is of course very important to have a proper spatial planning where we should take into consideration both the environmental protection needs and economic needs. I must emphasize that when we talk about protected areas in the Baltic Sea, we have discussed these issues already for a certain time. And already some 20 years ago, we marked different areas of the Baltic Sea that should be protected. And at that time, in Latvia, 4 such regions were reported: Ziemeļvidzeme region, coastal area, Dzeņi Ainaži, Kaltene Engure, Lielirbe Kolka, and Pape Pērkone. So these are actually the same areas that are protected on the land. So actually we extended these protected land areas to include also the coastal areas of the Baltic Sea. At that time we had very little knowledge about what is the Baltic Sea bottom formed of. However, during these years we have, of course, also adopted this so-called biotope directive, or the habitat directive, and of course the Baltic Sea also has undergone this classification where we talk about estuaries, shallow lagoons, sandbanks, reefs. So these are different types of classification that can be applied to our Baltic Sea, and which of these items can be applied to our areas. And of course we try to work in accordance with this classification in order to apply this protection under Natura 2000 program. And of course it is clear that we have certain reefs within our areas. I'll probably go into a bit of detail. So how do we carry out the studies in order to determine what are our areas comprised of? Our institute has a small boat, and when we talk about the reefs, they mainly consist of large rock that is located on the river bottom, and of course mainly these rocks are covered by certain vegetation or animals, and of course there is quite a large variety of reefs, and we have already agreed that we should also include different subtypes of reefs in order to be very precise. So in order to